October 3rd, 2025, Port Everglades, Florida. The cranes tower like sleeping giants over the dark water, sodium lights glinting off the steel. But under that calm surface, something monstrous is awake. For months, U.S. intelligence had followed whispers of an empire hiding in plain sight, a criminal machine that moved through America's own supply chain. They called it the Black Gun Network. It wasn't a rumor, it was real, and it was vast. Over 2,500 rifle kits, 12 million rounds of ammunition, and nearly $200 million in dirty money flowed through these docks disguised as marine equipment. Every container stamped with that innocent label wasn't carrying tools or fittings. It carried death, firepower enough to arm an entire nation. And before sunrise, 300 federal agents and Navy SEALs would risk everything to crush it. Would they succeed? Or would this empire evolve, spreading across borders, governments, and oceans before anyone could stop it? Let's find out. In a nondescript warehouse near the port, men clocked in like ordinary dock workers. Coffee, clipboards, silence. But the moment the door shut, routine vanished. This wasn't a marine hardware shop. It was an assembly line for war. Inside each steel container were 2,500 rifle components, barrels, triggers, bolt carriers, the mechanical bones of mass death. One container could build 1,200 combat rifles in a week. 3 containers a week meant over 180,000 rifles a year. To the world, it looked like business. Invoices were perfect, bank wires clean. The network even had a name that sounded boring enough to blend in: the Garrison Shield Network. Behind those dull spreadsheets hid an empire of violence. Payments moved through shell companies, cash exchanged in hotel rooms, wire transfers rounded to the nearest thousand to avoid suspicion. Every transaction was a whisper in a much louder storm. By the time investigators caught the pattern, it was almost too late. The question wasn't if this system was real, it was how deep it went. From October 7th to October 9th, the Gulf of Mexico was quiet. Too quiet. On glowing screens in Washington, Miami, and Laredo, analysts noticed something strange. 48 suspicious maritime transfers in 6 months, 12 cargo ships shutting off their transponders for exactly 42 minutes each time. And every blackout matched one event: the sudden appearance of a smaller, ghost vessel. No registration, no signal, heading straight toward Texas. Each time the cargo vanished from the radar like magic. At first it looked random, but when you lined up the times, the patterns, the offshore routes, it formed a perfect loop. A smuggling pipeline hidden inside international trade. The math was devastating. Each convoy carried around 3,600 rifle kits, enough to arm a cartel battalion every single week. And the money trail was worse. Through 34 shell companies across Florida, Panama, and Mexico, investigators traced $180 million per quarter, laundered through casinos, freight firms, and crypto wallets. It wasn't crime. It was commerce disguised as legitimacy. Then came the break. At 2:47 a.m., satellites picked up heat signatures. 7 unregistered skiffs detaching from a freighter 60 nautical miles offshore. Simultaneously, field agents intercepted coded chatter. Cargo ready. Transfer green. Numbers became movement. Movement became targets. And one encrypted word flashed through the command network: execute. It was 5:30 a.m., northern Far, Texas. Engines roared awake in the darkness. Helicopter rotors cut through humid air. Boots hit the ground, heavy and fast. 300 agents, FBI, ICE, Naval Intelligence, and SEAL teams advanced on a compound that had been untouchable for years. What unfolded next wasn't a raid, it was a battle. At 5:33, the first breach team sliced through the fence. Gunfire erupted immediately, orange flashes slicing through the fog. 3 armored trucks burst from the back lot, their mounted gunners firing wildly into the dark. But the SEALs were ready. 2 rockets streaked across the yard, detonating on impact. The lead truck shattered into flames. The second spun out, its tires shredded by 50 caliber fire from an overhead Blackhawk. Inside the compound, chaos. 70 cartel gunmen, grenades, machine guns, shouting in 2 languages. Over 7,800 rounds exchanged in 15 minutes. Tracer rounds cutting through smoke like red lightning. The air was thick with heat and dust. Then came the breakthrough. A SEAL unit stormed the East Warehouse, uncovering 1,200 rifles, 90,000 rounds, and crates stamped with 8 different cartel insignias. Another squad breached the control building, finding encrypted ledgers and manifests detailing future shipments. At 5:47, the final push began. 2 Apache gunships swooped low. Cannons roared. Fuel drums ignited. Towers collapsed. Explosions rolled across the valley like thunder. By 6:10 a.m., the yard was silent. 29 cartel gunmen dead. 38 captured. Hundreds of rifles recovered. And the network's heart shattered. Over the radio, one voice broke through the static. Objective Alpha secure. But victory came with a shadow, because in every commander's mind, one truth echoed. They'd cut off an artery, not the head. 3 days later, as smoke still hung over Texas, the war shifted to a new battlefield, the world of finance. On October 11th, 7 a.m., the HSI Financial Crimes Division launched the next strike, Operation Iron Ledger. Simultaneous raids hit 34 shell companies across Florida, the Bahamas, and Mexico. Office towers in Miami's Brickell district went dark as agents stormed in, cutting power and seizing servers before data could be erased. What they found stunned even the veterans. $62 million frozen on the spot. 280 bank accounts linked to arms shipments. Logs showing $740 million laundered over 18 months. One company alone had moved enough money to arm a battalion every 10 days. In San Antonio, tactical teams stormed a logistics safe house. Behind false walls, they found 5 unregistered trucks, each hiding crates of AR components, suppressors, and conversion kits. Over 5,000 weapon kits ready for export. A brief gunfight erupted. 3 suspects neutralized, 1 officer wounded, and the building engulfed after munitions inside ignited. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, DEA and local intelligence moved simultaneously. 11 cartel intermediaries captured, 7 vehicles loaded with rifles seized on Route 85. Each connected back to the same Florida accounts. The money spoke louder than words, and it told a single, terrifying story. This wasn't smuggling. It was industrialized war. By October 12th, the magnitude was undeniable. The Black Gun Network wasn't a side operation. It was an economy. A $1.2 billion machine built on deception, logistics, and blood. When federal agencies finally stood together in Washington, ATF, HSI, DOJ, and Naval Command, the numbers felt unreal. 5,000 fully assembled firearms, 12,000 kits, $245 million in frozen assets, 41 high-value arrests across 3 nations. But behind those statistics was something deeper: human cost and fragile peace. Within 2 weeks, cartel-linked violence along the border dropped by 28%. In towns like Hidalgo, for the first time in years, parents said their children slept through the night. That silence was victory, but also a warning. Because even as agents cataloged crates under floodlights in Fort Lauderdale, new intel whispered of fragments regrouping. New routes, new currencies, new digital shadows. The beast was learning. The images from the raids went viral. Stacks of rifles under tarps, pallets of ammunition, rows of armored trucks burned black. But inside the task force, no one celebrated. They knew what victory meant: a pause, not an ending. A letter arrived days later from a veteran whose brother had been killed in cartel crossfire. This wasn't just a bust, it was justice. Those words hit harder than any metal. And yet, the deeper the analysts dug, the clearer the truth became. Corruption had roots even in politics. A portion of the seized funds was traced to a political action group funneling campaign donations to state-level officials. The investigation is still open. Meanwhile, the people on the ground, The agents, the analysts, the SEALs, quietly went back to work, because for every empire dismantled, another begins to rise somewhere else. When the final report was filed and the press conferences ended, the war didn't stop. It just went underground again. From burned-out warehouses in Texas to quiet offices in Miami, the scars of this operation told one story. Evil evolves, but so does vigilance. Operation Iron Ledger proved something few believed possible: that coordination, courage, and persistence could crush even a billion-dollar shadow economy. It showed that when agents, soldiers, and sailors move as one, no wall of secrecy can stand. As the last armored convoy rolled away under the Florida sunrise, the mission closed with one truth carved into every heart that fought it. Justice may move slowly, but when it strikes, it leaves nothing standing. So if you believe these battles matter, against corruption, against violence, against the darkness itself, then share this story, subscribe, and help keep the light on. Because somewhere out there, another ship is already loading, and the next fight has just begun.